right, folks. Let's just go ahead and demo some of this stuff for you guys. First, show you some of the configuration options that I'm going to bring you guys to. I'm not going to show you guys everything, but I'm going to show you guys at least the parts that are going to affect the call routing piece of this Webex contact center. So what you guys are seeing here is me being logged into Webex Contact Center. And when you first log in, I guess what you begin to see here is you get to see some of the dashboards. If this was a production environment with actual calls coming through to my IVR and or going to agents, I would be able to customize some of these dashboards to be able to view some of these, I guess, stock reports, right, that are showing me some real-time information about my contact center. So there's that. Most of the configuration within this Webex Contact Center is going to be under this provisionings tab, okay? And so you can see all of kind of the pieces that we will be creating here to effectively create our contact center. There is this concept here which is known as an entry point and a queue, right? There are sites, teams, we can create users, which in this case are agents, right? We can mess with aux codes, agent profiles, multimedia profiles, you name it. All this stuff is there. There's skills-based routing here. What we want to focus on is really the call flows, right? So I'm going to whiteboard a little bit, show you guys exactly what we're going to be touching up on. And then what I'll probably do is just bring you guys into the configuration and just show you guys what kind of configurations are going to be offered to you guys, okay? First and foremost, I guess one of the first things that we need to define here is we must define exactly what an entry point is inside of this product. And the entry point inside of Webex Contact Center is kind of like think of it as a landing zone, right? There is something that's going to be associated to this entry point, and that's going to be your contact center telephone number, okay? And typically, whenever anybody dials this contact center number, this is the first place that you get into when you hit Webex Contact Center. This is called an entry point. A couple things about this entry point. You can create separate entry points for different types of interactions, as we will see with the configuration. You can have things like telephony entry points. You can have things like email. And you can also have things like chat as well. So whatever kind of interactions that you want to come inbound on this contact center, you're going to have to create separate entry points, one for each type of interaction, okay? And then, of course, there's going to be other things here like maximum wait time, right? How many maximum callers you're going to have. So we'll see that in the configuration. At some point in time, you see what's going to happen here is that this entry point is going to point to a queue, but this is not actually correct here, okay? What's going to happen here is an entry point is going to have what we like to call a routing strategy. I'm just going to label that as RS, okay? And inside of this routing strategy that we're going to be applying to this entry point, there is going to be some time-based stuff, like what time of day do I want this entry point to become active, right? What kind of call flow do I want from like 9 to 5? From 9 to 5, maybe you hear a standard IVR, make some selections based on some menu items, and then after I figure out what the objective of the caller is, I can then route you to a specific queue and or send you straight to an agent, okay? And so basically that's like a 9 to 5. But what happens after these hours, right? If you want different interactions, you might have to create different routing strategies for this entry point. Like for instance, maybe you go from, after 5 to midnight, right? Maybe you want like a closed message and then hang up the call. That's fine too. So you can configure all of those interactions based on a time-based schedule. That's kind of the main idea with the routing strategy, okay? Within your routing strategy, there's going to be an option for you guys to point to what we like to call a control script or a call control script, okay? This is effectively what we will show you as a call flow script. So there is a call flow builder that's built into the system. I will demo that. I'll show you guys what the call flow builder looks like, and I'll show you all the different options that you can do within the call flow builder, okay? If you guys have any experience with like a UCCX or UCCE, right? This is kind of like that. Call flow builder within UCCE, I think we call that call studios, right? It looks kind of like it. And I guess if you're dealing with UCCX with script editor, this is the equivalent of that, which is going to be this call flow thing, okay? What we're going to see happen is, remember that this is kind of a lie. The entry point doesn't really point you straight to the queue, right? But what's going to define that is our call control script is really going to point us to where we want to go. So for instance, maybe I have something in my call control script here that looks like a start button. And from the start button, perhaps I'm going to go down to like a menu item, okay? So if you have a menu item here, that's fine. And you know, based on your button presses, right? Maybe I press 1 for sales. And then maybe you press 2 for support, right? The idea here is within this call flow builder that I will show you is that if you press 1 for sales, this sales is going to directly point you to the sales queue, which is going to be associated with kind of like a team of agents, if you will. Okay. If you in fact try to touch the support queue and you press 2 from this menu item, you might be sent to another queue that is pre-configured. So you can have multiple queues and you can have multiple agents associated with those different types of queues here. Okay. But this is really the way that we're going to be able to route our traffic from the entry point to a specific queue and or a team of agents. Okay. Once we get to this queue, okay, there is a general configuration of the queue as we see here. But there's also something else here, also known as your routing strategy. It's almost like the same configuration that we see in our entry point. The main thing about this is that you will have a time-based schedule applied to this queue. Like for instance, you know, maybe I want this queue only to be active during like my 9 to 5, right? Or maybe I want this queue to be active and do something else during a different time frame, right? Based on the time-based schedules that you put on your queue, again, there is also another call control script that you're going to have to apply to that routing strategy. And here's the difference, right? This is kind of the biggest, not problem, but the biggest confusion whenever students start dealing with this stuff, is that inside of the entry point, this particular call control script always points to either another entry point, I'm going to call this an EP, and or it can go to a queue, excuse me. When we're dealing with a queue routing strategy, with a queue call control script, this typically is not going to point to another EP or queue. What this is going to point to is this typically is going to point to a team of agents, okay? And within your team, I guess this is where all your agents are going to reside. Agent 1, Agent 2, Agent 3, so on and so forth, right? So the call control scripts control exactly where you're pointing to, okay, based on a time-based schedule. So if I'm deciding that I'm going to point to team A over here, then that's essentially going to point here. The queue doesn't actually send you there. It's actually the call control script within the routing strategy of the queue that points you and directs you to all the different queues that you can go to. Okay. Here, what you'll see is you have to create some kind of a team. We're not going to go through the configuration there. I think I'm just going to show you guys the demo of how to configure this stuff and the routing strategies and call control scripts. But at some point in time, when you point to the teams, you know, everything should be routed at that point, right? Some agent configurations that we'll have to take a look at too. Within your agents, when you create them inside of this system, you will have quite a bit of configurations that you'll have to apply to your agents. Things like your agent profile. This will define kind of like your idle codes. They will define things like your wrap-up codes, right? Wrap-up reasons, if you will. It will define exactly what the agent sees on their agent desktop, right? Do you want some reporting metrics to show up? Do you not want it to show up, right? Do I want to see team statistics? Do I want to see my own statistics? So within the agent profile, what we're really controlling here is we're controlling what the agent sees within the agent desktop when they first log in. Okay, so that's an agent profile, if you will. Okay. The other thing that I guess you can define here are skills. Inside of the system, if you're worried about like a skills-based routing, most people are going to do that. I guess you can create a bunch of different skills. You can create Boolean skills, like true or false skills, right? You can create a prioritization. So there is levels of skills that you can create, like a level of 1 to 10, 10 being the expert, 1 being I don't know anything, right? You can also create other types of skills known as text, so matched, a queue based on a particular text, or you can create an enumerated value, right? So there's 4 different types of skills that you can create within this product. Boolean, I guess priority based, and then I guess you get text and you get enumerated values, okay? All of that's going to be defined under the skills profile, which eventually have to be applied to the agent, okay? And this here is a multimedia profile. This is going to define the different types of interactions that you want. For instance, I may have telephony, I may have chat, and then I may have email. What this multimedia profile is going to define for us is maybe I want 1 telephony interaction at a time, and maybe I want the system to present 2 chats to me, and then maybe I want 5 emails, right? So all the multimedia profile tells me is how many concurrent interactions can I have when I first log into this agent desktop, okay? And that's kind of that profile. There's another big profile that they don't list here, which we won't really go over either, but there's a user profile, which will define kind of like tenant access for like configurations. The user profile is typically going to be defined more for things like supervisors and or administrators that are going to be administrating the system, okay? But anyway, let's go through some of these configuration options just so that you guys can kind of get a feel for what's there, right? So that you can configure some stuff. In here, what we start to see is within my provisioning tab, I guess the first logical step is to get to the entry point, right? Which is the first thing that we kind of talked about, our landing zone within this contact center. So you can see that if I go to this entry point and queues, and then I click on my entry point, we'll be able to see some configurations. I have some configurations here for a telephony entry point for myself that I've created, and I'm just going to edit this to show you guys. We see that I've named it, and you can see that the type here can be entry point and or queue. This is going to be given a selection when you first set this up, right? And here the channel type. You cannot change things here, but you can change this when you first create this entry point. So at first it'll ask me, hey, what different types of interactions do you want? You want telephony, you want chat, or you want email, right? This is going to be for telephony only, right? And you can't really combine multiple interactions in one entry point. An entry point is going to be specific for a certain interaction here, okay? There's some service level threshold. I guess this is the first time we get to see this, but this service level threshold will define certain things for us when calls come into the contact center, right? Like how soon is my IVR going to pick up this phone call? I'm going to say 5 seconds here, and if it doesn't in fact pick up in 5 seconds, I guess this is something that I can report on, okay? So, and then you get maximum active calls. And what happens when 21 people decide to come in on this entry point at the same time? I guess you could configure like a 1-800-555-1212 here. You can define like an overflow, right? There are other places also that you can define this as well, but this is kind of the main place that you're going to define overflow. There are some other things here. There's a vendor ID. These call control script URLs in IVR, requeue URL, these are automatically populated, so you don't have to worry about them. They're just part of the system when we start getting into the routing strategies, right? You can specify a certain time zone for a certain entry point, right? Because time zones are a big thing when calling into a contact center, right? Then there's other things for mapping the group and billing purposes for, I guess, if you want to charge your customers, right? Anytime they're making phone calls and stuff, you can assign a billing group so that you can track that. There is also over here a IVR DN list. You guys see that? This is where your contact center number gets, I guess, mapped to your entry point. So when we take a look at this, right, this 818-969-7117, if you dial that, you would in fact hit this particular contact center. If you guys want to use your cell phones right now to be able to do that, you'd be able to kind of hear some of the selections that I have for you guys, right? So if you dial 818-696-7117, that is in fact going into this particular contact center right now. You could do that right now if you wanted to, right? So, can you map multiple DNs into a certain entry points? For sure. I can map as many contact center numbers as I want to become part of a single entry point. Okay, so multiple numbers is no problem with this product. Okay. Other things that you're going to get here is you're going to be able to see the scorecard routing. We'll talk about what that looks like in a minute, but there's an associated queue here. You see that? This is not something that I can select, and it's not something that I can toggle here. Basically what's happening is it's saying if anything hits this entry point, at some point, right, once I get through my whole IVR script, I'm going to point you to these queues here that's associated to this entry point. But here's the thing, this was not selected here when I first created this. If I can go back to this picture to show you guys what's happening in this cloud-based solution, when the call enters into this entry point, it's going to get through a routing strategy. It's going to go through a call control script. Within this call control script, remember how I told you guys that this will always either go to another entry point and or it can go to a certain queue. In this particular case, I'm pointing things to this queue, and this queue is going to go here. Okay? And that was defined within my call control script. Okay? Once you make this association to point things to the correct queue, you can then see it applied here in the associated queue section. Okay? And we will look at the routing strategies in a minute just so I can kind of show you guys what the system can do. Now, I know what some of you guys are thinking. Hey, Ben, is that the only kind of options I can toggle here? With this current product, yes. But this is definitely not everything that you can do, right? So there are things on the back end that you can always ask Cisco for some help for. Like for instance, there are RONA timers, right? That are not listed here for our configuration for the customer. But if you call Cisco, there are going to be, a Cisco professional services engagement. They will come in, they will help you guys out, set this up. And if there are certain timers that you don't see here, they can most likely change that for you, right? Some of those common changes I've been notified are basically free of charge. Some bigger changes, some customizations, typically cost a little bit more money, right? But this is definitely not all the options that you can get, okay? Another thing here is, since we are on this page and we're pointing things to this particular queue here, I kind of just want to show you guys some of the queue configuration. So if I can go to the queue, and then I go over here, I take a look at the queue contact center. Okay, this is going to be from that entry point. It's going to point to this particular object here. This is my queue that I'm creating. And you'll notice this queue is meant for telephony purposes, right? There's some stuff here that you can toggle for monitoring, for recording. If you want to record all calls, this system supports things like network-based recording too. You are able to offload your recordings as well if you want to with this product. There's going to be another service level threshold here. Okay. So we saw two already. We saw the entry point, and now we see this service level threshold. This is going to be the service level threshold for calls that are in queue. Okay? So if you're in queue, you're hearing music on hold, and you're waiting for an agent to answer the phone, I'm going to wait 300 seconds before I can start to report on this service level, right? And then after that, I guess you can deal with things like workforce management, workforce optimization to kind of fit your service level, right? There's a maximum number of calls here. And then I guess if you have too many people inside of queue, the sixth person that's going to be in queue at this point in time, I guess we can also configure that same overflow number that we had before, okay? So you can configure whatever it is that you need to here. This is not the only place that you can configure overflow, like I mentioned before. We can always go into the routing strategy and define that as well, okay? Which we will see here in a minute. Some other stuff that you guys have seen before, there's a time zone, there's map group, there's a billing group for billing purposes, right? And then you can see here that I am associated with some scorecard routing for my routing strategies, okay? This queue does not actually tell you what team of agents you're going to be sending things to, okay? So I guess where we're going to go next is we're going to go ahead and focus on these routing strategies to kind of see what kind of routing strategies we can come up with, right? So if I can go over here to routing strategies, that's one of the other kind of main points to this particular page, is that we can get to routing strategies. And definitely this is not everything that you're going to be able to see on the left-hand side. It just depends on what kind of features you have activated in this cloud product. Like if you paid for things like workforce management or workforce optimization, that stuff can show up here, right? It could be a clickable link to go to places like Calabrio if you wanted to. Any other kind of advanced functionalities can show up if you have purchased those pieces of the contact center, right? So this is what we get here for this week, unfortunately. I'm going to go to the routing strategy, though. I'm going to show you guys. What this routing strategy thing looks like. Hold on. I don't know why it's asking me to log on again, but. Here we go. So I'm going to go to that routing strategy thing. And basically what you get is you get another kind of a pop-up page. And from here, what you guys are going to be able to see here is that I got routing strategies that I can configure. There are capacity-based teams, which in this system just means, hey, this is me wanting to transfer to a particular number, right? You can configure overflow that way as well. There's call control scripts, which I will show you guys in a minute. And then there's going to be some resource management stuff, like maybe I want to upload my wave files, my prompts, my menu prompts, right? My play greetings. You can upload all that stuff here. So where I'm going to focus on is I'm going to look at the call control script just to kind of show you guys what this call flow builder looks like, right? In this call flow builder, I guess there's a couple of call control scripts that are already created for this particular system, right? And so this is what the call flow builder kind of looks like. You can kind of see all the different nodes that you have access to, right? And I don't know if I necessarily agree with what we're doing here, setting up a bunch of this call flow with a bunch of N call nodes. That doesn't make a lot of sense for me because, you know, as a contact center administrator, right, one of our goals here is to try to not hang up the phone call. So what I would have done here is probably, I don't know, maybe I want to loop this back to the menu prompt and, you know, maybe get rid of some of these little N calls and maybe I want to loop them back to kind of like their language prompts, right? So you can do whatever it is that you want here. And this call flow builder is kind of easy to understand. You can kind of see the different types of nodes. There's a play node that you can drag and drop into the system, okay? And then again, there's going to be like things that you can drag it to, right? Hey, I want to go here, or hey, I want to go here, right? This play prompt is an uninterruptible prompt. And here's the thing. If you have a call control script And notice if you drag over some of these node icons, you can specify your WAV file, or you don't even have to select anything at all. Okay. If you don't select anything at all, this will allow you to reuse this, I guess, call control script across multiple customers that you may have, right? So you don't have to define your media here, although you can if you want to. It's up to you, okay? But this greeting prompt is uninterruptible, okay? If you decide to put a menu item here, notice what you get here with the menu node, is that you get media, so this is going to be the WAV file that gets played, right? This prompt happens to be interruptible though. And here's the thing is, I guess you can look at my different branches I have here. Hey, press 1 for English, press 2 for German, right? Well, what if I wanted to have different branches? I guess you can increase the number of branches you have, and you can point them to anywhere you want, right? Hey, maybe I want to end the call here or something, okay? So you can definitely increase the number of branches that you have here. And then you can kind of see how I have other menu items here. At some point in time, what's going to happen is I'm going to point to this queue, okay? And you guys will notice that there are some things about this that are kind of weird. Like, okay, I know I'm creating my script here, right? But Ben, why are you labeling these things? Like, why am I labeling 1 goes to English, and then why did I label this little branch thing here, English? And the reason for that is because later on I want to do things like skills-based routing. And being able to label these branches help me to kind of associate, hey, if they press 1 for this menu item, I want to make a certain skill out of that, right? I want to set a skill so that only certain agents will be able to pick up a certain phone call. So that's kind of why I'm labeling the branches. You don't have to, but when you start doing skills-based routing, it's a good idea to start labeling these branches, right? So you got English, you got German here, and then over here, I have another WAV file that's going to be playing, and I guess if you press 1, what's going to happen here is I'm requesting to talk to somebody that's contact center certified, and I guess if you press 2, it's going to end this call, right? Again, I wouldn't necessarily do this in the real world, but it's just an example, folks. Okay. Anyway, yeah, so if you take one path, I guess it's English, contact center certified, and then you're going to get to a queue. And or I guess you can press number 2 for German and contact center certified, and that will also go to the same queue, right? But here's the thing is I will be able to define some of these options later, okay, as to what skills I want each branch to take. All right? If you're coming from a UCCE environment, or I know some of you guys are coming from a UCCX environment, you're thinking, hey, Ben, is that absolutely all the nodes that you can configure here within this call flow? For now, yes. But does that mean that you can't do other things in here, like get the expected wait time for agents, or does that mean that I can't get things like querying an external database for certain variables? Absolutely not, right? Cisco may have to help you build and customize your own call flow, okay? Because there are some menu items that are just not here for us as administrators to be able to control for ourselves, at least not yet, right? Again, this product's pretty new, and I imagine that this is going to change here in the future, but what you see here is what you get, and then if you want any other types of customizations, typically this goes through Cisco, okay? But these are the things that you're going to get from this call flow. So take note of this script name, okay? This script name right now is CC Contact Center, okay, folks? I'm going to show you how we're going to apply this call control script to our either queues and or entry points, okay? So where I'm going to take you guys next is I'm going to go to routing, and I'm going to go to routing strategies, okay? Remember, the reason why I'm going to the routing strategy in the first place is, remember, we're going to get into the entry point, and we need to go ahead and configure the routing strategy based on a time-based schedule to tell this entry point what to do when people get there, okay? So that's kind of what I'm going to show you guys here. We already kind of looked at the call control scripts down here, but now we're going to take a look at the routing strategy. So if I go down to my telephony routing strategy, okay, you'll notice that there's a couple of routing strategies here. The current routing strategy is system generated, and it generates based on the routing strategy that you created as the administrator. So because I create this routing strategy, what happens is the system automatically makes a replica of it, right? And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you the routing strategy that's currently there right now. You'll notice that this routing strategy has a name to it, right? It has a start date, it has an end date, right? And then there's some time association, and then how am I going to activate this entry point, right? So it looks like I'm making this all days, or I guess if you make this weekdays, you can change that to Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. If you don't want to use a toggle thing, I guess you can just manually do whatever you want here, right? And it automatically changes that to specific days that you want here. And I guess what I want to show you guys is, okay, if anytime you hit this entry point 24/7, 365 days a year, what's going to happen is I have some options here for you to look at. Ignore this for right now, okay? Don't look at the music on hold setting. You're not going to get that here. This is effectively my IVR. Once I hit this routing strategy, 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, I'm going to go and I'm going to hit this call control script, okay? And we looked at that call control script before, right? Menu item, press 1 for English, press 2 for German. That's what this thing's defining here, okay? If you created your own call control script, typically what you can do is you can click on this image and you can kind of see, oh, hey, this is what my call control script is doing for this particular entry point. And this is my IVR, okay? So I'm trying to find out what the caller's objective here is. You can notice that a bunch of this stuff is pre-filled out. I didn't have to fill this out because what happened is in my call control script, I had already defined all these WAV files. So you can kind of see that all this stuff kind of gets pre-filled for me if you've done the work within the call control script. If you didn't do the work in the call control script, all of this would be blank and would be required for you guys to make the selection every single time you go in and save this page. Okay? So, again, hit the uninterruptible message for the greeting. And then here's what I want from my menu prompt for the WAV file, right? Here's the secondary prompt for my English and then a secondary prompt for my German speaking menu, right? And then here's the thing. This queue, okay, this queue here is going to send me straight to this guy right here, okay? Because inside of my call control script, I'm basically saying I want to point stuff to a certain queue. The way that I define that is I define that here with this configuration, okay? So it's pretty simple the way that this call flow really works. I think it's a lot less messy than a lot of different things that we're used to in UCCX and UCCE, but, you know, it works. So it's a fantastic little ACD here. We saw before inside of our call control script, there's some stuff here that has to do with some skills, right? Press 1 here, press 2 to go to German. How do I define those skills? Well, over here, if you take a look at this little manage button right here, you can, and this is the reason why we are labeling certain things, right? Like notice this English and then this German thing, because the system automatically knows that when you hit this kind of like call control script, you have one path, right? Or I guess you have a couple paths. Let me show you what the pathing is. You have a path where if you press 1, you're going to go to the English, and then you're going to go down here to the queue. I know that end call is kind of in the way, but you got one path here, right? Go the English path. The second path, I guess, that you can take is that you can go ahead and press 2 for German. And that's going to eventually go down to this same queue, okay? So the system automatically knows how many paths you're going to take to get to a certain destination, to Q1, to Q2, to however many queues you want, so that when you guys go in and you configure the kind of skills, when we click on this manage button, it already knows that there are 2 paths here. And that's why we're labeling our branches here, one to be English and one to be German, right? So that when I select a certain path here, I can edit the skill. And I can do things like, hey, here is the type of agent that I'm going to want to answer this call. So anybody with a skill of English that's equal to or greater than 7. So if I have a bunch of people that have like 8, 9, 10, 7 skill for English, they would be able to answer this phone call. People that don't have, the necessary skills to be able to answer this call, they just won't be selected from the system. Okay. So this would be a prioritization skill, if you will, right? You can see that slider. This would be an example of a Boolean skill, right? So do you want to talk to someone contact center certified? Press 1 for yes, press 2 for no. So if they press 1 for yes, they want to speak to someone with contact center experience here, okay? If they say no, then I guess it's going to take the false action. And you can add as many of these skills as you want, as many skills that you have created here, right, within the system. So, and again, it's not like we get to define the path. The system automatically knows the path based on how many different queues you have. Like for instance, if I go back to the call control script and I show you a better picture of that call control script, right? We know that the pathing to get further along in our contact center, you only got 2 paths, right? You go to the English portion or you go to the German portion, and you get to the same queue here. All right? So that's why we only see those 2 separate paths. If I had done something like this, okay, and maybe instead of sending 2 over there, maybe I want to send things here. Okay, oop, don't want to do that. Maybe I want to send stuff here, and then I want to get rid of this guy. Get rid of this guy, okay? So, if you press 2, perhaps you're going to go to the second queue. In this particular case, if you went back and you looked at your entry point, you'd see, I guess, 4 effective paths, right? You could go English, contact center certified, or you could go German, contact center certified, or I guess the other option would be to go English, not contact center certified, or you can go German and then not contact center certified. So you get 4 total paths in this particular case. And that's only if you want to create different queues within this IVR. Okay? So, we just covered all of this, and this will tell you exactly what queue to go to. Okay? What we're going to take a look at now is we're going to take a look at the routing strategy for the particular queues. And hopefully that kind of answers some questions that you guys have. But if I go to routing strategies, and now I can't go to the entry point routing strategy, what I want to do is I want to go to a queue routing strategy. So I'm going to go to the WXCC cert routing strategy, and I'm going to take a look at it. Okay? And you can kind of see it looks kind of the same, but there are some differences here. One of the differences here is that you get to define exactly what kind of routing type you're going to have. Because I know that when I get to a queue, I either want this to be longest available, I want this to be skills-based, I want this to be load balance, I want this to be prioritized. So you get to select which kind of routing type you want here. Okay? So we want to do skills-based routing. And in skills-based routing, maybe I'd do longest available. Really, if you're going to do skills-based routing, you want best available agent, right? And best available agent based on what here? Based on which skill? You want English here? You want German? What do you want, right? So we can always configure the different types of skills that we want to associate for our queues, okay? There's some time-based schedules of when I want this queue to run, okay? And during the time that anybody enters into this queue during this time frame, here's what I'm going to play for you. I'm going to play this music in queue. They call this an MIQ, okay? Don't pay any attention to this advanced settings right now. So if anybody gets in the queue and no agents are available, they're going to hear this whole music here in MIQ, okay? Why is that there? Well, that's because there's a call control script that's defining that for me. If I take a look at my call control script here, there's a call control script that essentially says, hey, from my entry point, I know that I'm pointing things to this queue, and from this queue, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start this call control script, and then I'm going to play that wave file here. And what we don't see is that afterwards, what's going to happen is that we get to define exactly how we're going to distribute this call to whichever teams we want, okay? So we get team 1 to, I don't know, team 10 or whatever. So the actual routing of the call comes after this call control script, okay? But that's kind of why we see the MIQ2 here, because our call control script is defining, hey, we're going to want to go to this team of agents and we're going to want to play music until they get there, okay? Here's another thing that I like to mention to my students here. You guys see the maximum time in queue here? But hey, Ben, you also have a maximum time in queue here too. So what the heck? What if both of these things are different? Like what if you see the same options here in the general settings as you do in the routing strategy settings? And what if this is different? Like what if I make this 500 and not 600, right? Isn't that going to interfere with the way things are routed? No. What's going to happen is the system's going to prioritize a certain value over another. So the values that you're always going to take precedence is the ones that are going to reside within the routing strategies. So irregardless of what you do here in the front cover, which is the general setting within your queue here, if you define it in the routing strategies, it always takes precedence, okay? So that's kind of cool thing to know about the call flows. And then here, I guess, is the way we're going to distribute our calls. So if I scroll down a little bit more, you'll see that there's a call distribution here. We didn't see this in our entry point. So again, let me go back and show you that. If I go to the routing strategy within my entry points, right, you'll notice there's no such thing here for call distribution. You will never get a call distribution tab or option within your entry point because everything must first go into the queue, even if you're not being queued. So I guess that's the thing that a lot of people have problems with is, you know, what if you're not being queued? Like what if you go into the IVR and there are available agents? Shouldn't I just be able to go to the agent? Technically, no. You still need to go to this queue, even though you may not experience music on hold, even though agents may still be available. Because within the queue routing strategy, they have this call distribution for you, okay? So when we distribute our calls, I guess we can add certain groups here. If I click Add Group, you can kind of see the configuration that I've already done. Well, actually, not Add Group, excuse me. If I added a group, I guess it would just bring up Group 3 here. It's always additive, okay? So what's going to happen here is I want to modify this Group 1. Here's the way that I have configured this. So when you click Add Group at first, this is what shows up. And these are the selections that I am making right here, okay? Now, you can kind of see down here that there's a Group 2. How does that work? Well, the way that it works is if I've made my selection of B, Team A, and Team A, I'm now going to save this group, and then what you get here is now you're going to get group number 2 in this particular case. So you get to select your Group 2 here, right? And then things like after 60 seconds, you can broaden your search horizons. Like in this particular case, I configured it to be, hey, after 20 seconds in queue, I want to open this up more and include more teams of agents to be able to pick up this phone call, right? So what I've done here is I have selected Team D and Team C, and in addition to Team D and Team C, after 20 seconds, maybe I've been thinking, hey, you know what? Maybe my skills that I have defined are a little bit too harsh. Maybe I want to do skills relaxation. So what you tend to see here is, for my skills relaxation, I'm really removing the English skill as a selection criteria, and I'm also removing a contact center certified skill for my Boolean statement. So that means Team D and Team C are not going to have to require these skills anymore. And same goes with Team B and A, but any of your previous teams that were inside of the, I guess, call distribution, once you relax a skill, it's going to relax the skill for everybody, okay? So the way that the skills relaxation works here, if I select these two teams, there's going to be a tab here for skills relaxation, okay? And you can do things like, hey, maybe I don't want to remove it. Maybe I want to decrease this because originally it was 7. Maybe I want to decrease this to 3. And then, if you want to add more skills, like maybe for German, I want to remove that, for instance. Whatever it is that you want to do here, folks. Okay. But there are options here for skills relaxation and things for call routing, routing things to an external number. That's known as a capacity-based team. But everything basically is done within the routing strategy. So I'd say within this call routing and call flow stuff, the most important thing to understand is really this page here for the routing strategies for your entry points and queues. Okay? And I guess from the picture that we kind of saw before, now that we know what's going to happen within our queue, right, via the call distribution within my routing strategies, I'm sending the call to these team of agents, however many agents I want. Okay? And I guess if you take a look at some of the more complex things, right, I guess you can point multiple queues to the same kind of teams as you want, right? So I can have everybody coming into this main IVR piece, okay? And again, from my IVR piece, there's a routing strategy associated to it. There's going to be a call control script associated it. One of these call control scripts is going to point to 2 different destinations here, okay? And I can either point to a queue or another entry point. So I may have a main IVR here, and then maybe I have like a sub IVR here. So, these are just IVR components. Anytime you hit an entry point, I think of this as kind of like IVR stuff. You're going to be playing stuff for, I guess, the caller, right? But hey, here's the thing. As soon as you get to the queue, right, that means that I'm probably going to be experiencing, I'm not collecting information from the caller anymore. What I'm basically doing here is I'm hearing some type of music on hold until agents become available, right? So that's kind of the way that I logically think about that. But then the queues can point to any team of agents, multiple teams of agents, whatever you want to define. Okay? Questions, folks? I know that was kind of a lot. And typically when I teach this class or the Webex Contact Center class, it typically takes about 1 full day to kind of get through all of these configuration options and lead you guys to the promised land. But, we kind of did it here in an hour. So, any questions, folks, that you guys might have for me?
Hey, Ben, how long has this product been available?
So it's always been available, not through Cisco, right? So traditionally what happened was BroadSoft was acquired by Cisco, I believe sometime last year. And this product, as we know it now, used to be called something known as CJP, or Customer Journey Platform. And now with the acquisition, Cisco kind of rebranded it to Webex Contact Center, right? So it's been available now it's always been available, but from Cisco, I think it's been available since last year, okay? But it's all cloud-based, right? That's kind of the draw for this stuff is not all your customers or not all contact centers are all complex. They may be simple contact centers. This is really for those simple contact centers, right? Not to say that you can't do any more advanced stuff, but yeah, it's just a cloud offering from Cisco. So, let's see who else I have in here. Bill, Ernie, Javier, you guys got any questions for me?
I don't, thank you.
Okay, how was that demo? Was it okay? Did you guys learn something? Did that help?
Yeah, actually, it was really great. It's very informative about the WebEx call center. I hadn't actually heard about it before this.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, I think it's kind of a good idea for people to just kind of get a feel for what this product is and like how complicated or not complicated it's going to be, depending on what you're used to, right? So.
One part of the configuration I didn't see, is it, or maybe an object somewhere, in one of the scripts, is it possible to do an HTTP or a post of any kind or a database dip?
Yes, you can do that, but here's the thing that I'm going to tell you is usually this stuff is going to require some type of a professional services engagement, right? I believe some of the more common requests, like ones that you're asking for those data dips, those are things that Cisco will help you kind of do until they design a call control script that gives us all the options that we can control ourselves, right?
Okay.
So it is, a lot of this stuff could be professional services engagement that you have to engage Cisco with. So anyway, I'll field more questions, as many questions as you guys have. I have another kind of demo that I have here at right around, I think like 1 o'clock, where I'll probably demo the agent desktop, have a bunch of you guys call in. So if you guys come in at that time, I guess you guys will be able to see supervisor views, agent views, right? And then maybe we'll do some call recording or something along those lines. So,
Cool.
but if you have questions, let me know.
Thank you.
You're welcome, folks.
Thanks.
And if I don't see you, I guess have a happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks, you too.